Is climbing Kilimanjaro really dangerous? All outdoor activities carry some degree of risk. Hiking is no different. Though hiking is a fun and fulfilling way to see the world, it can also take you to high elevations that your body isn't used to. Mount Kilimanjaro summit stands 19,341 feet above sea level. Subjecting the human body to these altitudes puts the body at stress. The reason is that there's less and less oxygen as we climb higher and higher on the mountain. The air we breathe is primarily made up of two gases, nitrogen and oxygen. The composition of air is consistent irrespective of the altitude. It's exactly the same at sea level and at high altitude. However, the pressure in the atmosphere, also known as barometric pressure, decreases as we climb higher. That means there are less molecules of nitrogen and oxygen at higher altitudes as there's less pressure to compress them. It follows that there's less oxygen for every breath we take. When your body doesn't have enough oxygen, you could get hypoxia. Hypoxia occurs when there are low levels of oxygen in your tissues. Hypoxia can lead to several altitude illnesses. Deaths on Kilimanjaro. Every year, there are deaths on Mount Kilimanjaro. However, because the Kilimanjaro National Park authorities don't release statistics, it's impossible to know just how many fatalities occur and whether the mountain is getting more or less dangerous as the years pass. The reason for the lack of transparency, presumably, is that the country does not want to scare away tourists from climbing Kilimanjaro. So instead of being able to analyze the true risk, we are forced to take educated guesses. This video will attempt to put Kilimanjaro's fatalities in perspective. First, we should discuss how many people climb Kilimanjaro annually. The typical season sees more than 30,000 climbers, but in some exceptional years, that number swells to 50,000. In any given year, the number of reported tourist deaths on Kilimanjaro is approximately 10. But this number may understate the true number of fatalities because not all deaths are reported. The actual number of deaths is generally believed to be 2 to 3 times higher. However, these figures are also unsupported. Why do people die on Kilimanjaro? As mentioned before, there's less oxygen at high elevations. Your body must adapt to the low oxygen environment in order to continue functioning properly. There are several altitude-related illnesses that result from hypoxia, which comprise the most common causes of death on Kilimanjaro. High altitude illness, HAI, or acute mountain sickness, AMS. High altitude pulmonary edema, HAPE. High altitude cerebral edema, HACE. Heart attacks, rock falls. High altitude illness, also known as acute mountain sickness or altitude sickness, is caused by the failure of the body to adapt quickly enough to the reduced oxygen. It's very common for climbers to have some degree of altitude sickness during their trek. The main cause of altitude sickness is going too high too quickly. Altitude sickness may be mild, moderate, or severe. Climbers with mild symptoms of altitude sickness, such as headaches, dizziness, or shortness of breath, may continue on their trip as long as their symptoms don't worsen. High-altitude pulmonary edema and high-altitude cerebral edema are severe forms of altitude sickness. HAPE results from fluid buildup in the lungs. HACE is the result of swelling of brain tissue from fluid leakage. Both of these conditions are potentially fatal and must be treated immediately. Being at high altitude can affect factors like blood pressure. It can affect the cardiovascular system by decreasing oxygen in the blood while increasing the demand on the heart. Therefore, climbing Kilimanjaro could be dangerous for those with heart conditions and increase the risk of complications and heart attack. Rock falls are rare on Kilimanjaro, but they do occur on occasion. The Western Breach, in particular, is an area that has had fatal rockfall accidents. Ultimate Kilimanjaro does not operate on the Western Breach for this reason. We feel it's an unnecessary risk to take and don't want to subject our clients to this danger. It should be noted that unlike other mountains, Kilimanjaro doesn't have exposure to vertical drops. Even the intimidating Barranco Wall poses minimal danger. Thus, falling off the mountain isn't a legitimate threat on established Kilimanjaro routes. Kilimanjaro Death Study. In a 2004 study, researchers reviewed the deaths of tourists who were climbing Kilimanjaro over an 8-year time span. The paper examined all autopsies of climbers who died on Kilimanjaro between 1996 and 2003. The paper noted that autopsies are legally required in Tanzania on all fatal incidents involving tourists, suggesting that the figures cited should be complete and accurate. Here are the results. In the 8 years that were studied, 25 tourists died while climbing Kilimanjaro. The ages of the deceased ranged from 29 to 74 years. 17 were male and 8 were female. 14 of the 25 tourists died due to severe altitude sickness, and 11 of 25 died from non-altitude related reasons such as trauma, heart attack, and pneumonia. This translates to an overall mortality rate of 13.5 per 100,000 climbers, or 1 death per 7,353 climbers. Expressed as a percentage, the death rate is 0.0136%. If we apply the mortality rate from the study to the 30,000 to 50,000 climbers that Kilimanjaro receives on an annual basis, the number of deaths on the mountain comes to about 4 to 7 per year. This figure is lower than the mortality rate that's often stated, 10 deaths per year. Furthermore, it's substantially less than the 20 to 30 deaths that industry insiders believe is the more accurate number. So what could account for the discrepancy? A few factors could explain the difference. Less experienced climbers attempting Kilimanjaro. Mount Kilimanjaro is more popular now than it was during the time that preceded the study. Adventure travel was once the realm of experienced outdoor enthusiasts, so those who climbed in the past were likely to have performed adequately at high altitude before. Kilimanjaro's mortality rate could be higher now because of more inexperienced or unprepared climbers attempting the mountain. Nowadays, regular people are drawn to active vacations. As adventure travel becomes more inclusive of the general population, those who climb may be less fit, less prepared, or unsuited for high altitude trekking. They might have risk factors that have yet to be discovered. We estimate that half of our clients have never been on a backpacking trip and have never tested their ability to acclimatize prior to climbing Kilimanjaro. Logically, the danger for an inexperienced climber is greater than it is for an experienced climber. Greater number of low-quality operators. Another factor that may contribute to the death rate is the growing number of bad Kilimanjaro guide companies. There are more than 200 operators on Kilimanjaro. Unfortunately, the vast majority of them are budget operators who don't have proper safety standards in place. Only a couple dozen companies can be considered trustworthy. Thousands of tourists blindly trust their lives with companies whose staff are not medically trained to deal with emergencies. There are many accounts from visitors who chose to climb with a budget company only to find that safety precautions were completely omitted during their expedition. Always make sure your guide company is serious about your health and safety. Actual mortality lower than believed. Finally, we must also consider the possibility that there are not 10 to 30 tourist deaths per year. Rumors of deaths spread quickly on the mountain, which may or may not be accurate. Approximately 1,000 people are evacuated or rescued every year, and nearly all of them recover once they reach lower elevations. Some are taken to the hospital for further treatment. While on the mountain, our guides frequently hear stories of possible fatalities that occurred a night or two before. Many times, there are no details surrounding the tale beyond the person's gender, nationality, and where he or she allegedly died. These rumors are often unsubstantiated or proven to be false. Are there bodies on Mount Kilimanjaro? Mount Everest is famous for having corpses on the route to the summit. It's said that there are more than 200 bodies on Mount Everest, suggesting that 2/3 of the people that died on Everest are still there. The reason the bodies are left is that recovery would be very dangerous for the team involved. A frozen body can weigh over 300 pounds, and to carry the body over treacherous terrain puts the Sherpa at high risk. On top of that, the effort would be very expensive to organize. Unlike Mount Everest, Mount Kilimanjaro is easy to navigate from top to bottom. In fact, an injured climber can be evacuated from anywhere on the mountain in a matter of hours. In the event of a serious emergency where a client can't walk on their own, porters can carry climbers down manually or with the use of a stretcher. There are roads that reach the lower slopes on Kilimanjaro, so parked vehicles can transport people off the mountain. Also, there are landing pads that are used for helicopter rescue. Therefore, there are no bodies on Kilimanjaro due to the relative ease of access to the areas on the mountain where tourists would be. How can you decrease the dangers of climbing Kilimanjaro? Climbing Kilimanjaro has potential dangers, but overall, it's pretty safe based on the mortality rates discussed earlier. Proper planning and preparation will reduce most risks significantly. Things like selecting a longer route, training for the hike, and having the adequate gear go a long way in keeping yourself safe. Climbing with an experienced and safety-focused operator like Ultimate Kilimanjaro can eliminate the remaining risks almost entirely. The best Kilimanjaro companies have robust safety practices and protocols built around reducing the inherent danger of summiting a high-altitude peak. I encourage you to take a look at our complete list of safety precautions to get an idea of how seriously we take your health. Though you might think that all companies operate this way, they don't. Most Kilimanjaro operators don't have meaningful safety systems in place and aren't prepared for emergencies. Setting high standards is a process that requires constant learning, training, and evaluation. At Ultimate Kilimanjaro, we strive for continuous improvement. It's what we've done to become the #1 guide service on the mountain for 15 years and counting. Visit ultimatekilimanjaro.com for everything you need to know about climbing Kilimanjaro. Please like and subscribe for more videos. I'll see you at the summit.